Saw the company scale in my 9-year tenure there from about 60 employees to 6,000 and go from 8 million in revenue to about $1 billion in revenue when I left. And my goal was to replace my W-2 income in about 5 years. Starting in 2018 up until about a year ago when I left my job, I bought 16 small multifamily homes and replaced my W-2 income. I learned pretty quickly that those smaller transactions are somewhat difficult to scale, and I knew I needed to get into bigger buildings. One of the best pieces of advice I got early on, and I didn't listen to it, was go bigger sooner. Because for all intents and purposes, doing a 2-unit transaction, it's the same more or less as doing a 186 unit.
Welcome back to Multifamily Rockstar. So as you guys know, this is where we interview people that are just flat out crushing it in our business. And we show the inside scoop as to how multifamily investors are creating massive success, both in their businesses and in their lives. And as always, I've got the co-host, Mark Nagy, who's the director of our massive action team for our Warrior Group. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Rod. Happy to be here, and good to see a familiar face almost exactly a year from when I first met this guy. So it's good to see some progress.
Love it. Love it. Well, we've got Harrison Riley on, who's one of our kick-ass warriors and super intelligent guy. Really looking forward to this interview. And, he's about to close on his first deal, 186 doors this month. So we'll hear about that. But welcome to the show, Harrison.
Yeah, thank you both so much for having me. And before we get started, just a big thank you to you, Rod, and all the stuff you do around promoting educational material around real estate investing and kind of bridging the gap between the unknown to get people to know what this business is all about. And I know you're a firm believer in that this is not a zero-sum game and that everybody can win in concert or in partnership. So big thank you to that end.
Oh, thank you, brother. I really appreciate that. That's very kind of you. Well, why don't you tell our peeps what, where you came from, what you're up to, what you've done in the past, and why real estate? I know you had a very successful career, or maybe still do in other things that you're doing. So yeah, kind of let us know where it all happened and bring us up to speed.
Yeah, so I've been out of college, for 15 years now. Feels like yesterday. But I started my career at Accenture in the systems integration consulting practice and lasted about 2.5 years, which is pretty a long tenure for a consultant because you don't really have a life. You're traveling all across the country, but you get access to some of the world's largest organizations, and you get to see large scale technology implementations that have typically been done incorrectly. And your job is to come there and make recommendations and fix them. Like I said, didn't last super long there because I knew that I just didn't want to be a traveling consultant and I wanted a life again. So I had the bright idea of joining an enterprise software startup company, which ultimately gave me less of a personal life. But professionally, it was probably one of the best things that I ever done. I was an early team member at a company called Okta, where I was responsible for building out the go-to-market business operations and business technology functions. Saw the company scale in my 9-year tenure there from about 60 employees to 6,000 and go from 8 million in revenue to about $1 billion in revenue when I left.
Wow.
So it was an amazing ride, but I think most people have this kind of experience in their professional career where they're like, hey, maybe I've kind of reached my limits of this job and I can't see myself doing this in the future forever. So what am I going to do? And I had that experience in about 2018. And I asked myself, how many more Oktas do I have in me? And the conclusion I came to was 0. So I said, okay, if the answer is 0, what the heck am I going to do? And the two things that I did more than any other were I read about sports and watched sports. Gonzaga basketball and the Golden State Warriors are two of my biggest passions in life, outside of my wife and kids, of course. Mm-hmm. But I knew I couldn't make money doing that, like watching sports. If I could, I would love to make that my occupation. Yeah, I wish we all could, right? But then the other thing that I found myself doing incessantly was checking Zillow, right? Looking at what property values were, looking across geographies, like where there were opportunities. So I said, okay, maybe I can do a career in real estate. So then I set off on a journey to devour as much real estate podcast books as possible, yours included, and just said, hey, I need to do something. And my goal was to replace my W-2 income in about 5 years. So I'm proud to say that starting in 2018 up until about a year ago when I left my job, I bought 16 small multifamily homes and replaced my W-2 income. And we can talk about kind of the strategies behind how I got there. But then ultimately, and then this leads me into the Warrior group. I learned pretty quickly that business, those smaller transactions are somewhat difficult to scale. And I knew I needed to get into bigger buildings. And I said, okay, what do I do? And the logical answer was get a mentor and get into a coaching program. Because if I'm going to do bigger deals, I better know what I'm doing. And I better have a team that I can bring to my investor base that has a track record and has the ability to execute. So that's kind of my high level story about why real estate.
Very cool. Very cool. So, so you got 16 multifamily properties. Where were these? Were these scattered or in one particular location?
Great question. I hyper-focused on Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, for two reasons. Namely, and I live in the Bay Area, so it was a huge leap to buy, my first 4 or 5 properties sight unseen before I actually went out to Pittsburgh to visit the local market. But I looked at Pittsburgh, namely because they had huge millennial influx per capita relative to other metro areas. So my simple logic was follow where the cool kids go. We've seen that play out well time and time again. Look at New York City, look at San Francisco.
Were these in the urban part of Pittsburgh, like the older brick, older parts of town where you bought these assets, like areas that you thought might be gentrifying, or were these areas that had already bounced back, or was it more suburbia? I'm just curious, just for my own edification.
It's a really good question. And it was kind of a learning too. I didn't have as hyper focused of like a sub-market in Pittsburgh that I should have. So I really bounced around Pittsburgh proper, but didn't hyper focus on a specific area, but all within the confines of the city of Pittsburgh. Yep. Okay. So then, these were older properties then for the most part, yes? For the most part, they were.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Please continue. Sorry, I interrupted.
No worries. And Pittsburgh also has a pretty thriving tech community. A lot of jobs, robotics jobs, specifically Google, Facebook, and Uber have the robotics divisions there. And Carnegie Mellon, a prestigious engineering university, is a big feeder into those employment opportunities. And this was in 2009, 2020, and then COVID hit, right? Mm-hmm. So then a lot of jobs just left California and went to other places. And Pittsburgh was a great COVID benefactor as well. Not that was in my operating model, but it worked out.
Interesting. I had no idea that, Pittsburgh's known for steel and auto manufacturing. I had no idea that it had robotics and things like that. I guess it would kind of makes sense, but, I had no idea that there was millennials moving in there. This is all news to me. I know that it's got a dated urban infrastructure similar to Denver proper, for example, where I have a lot of experience buying older homes. Now, did you, just out of curiosity, and then we'll move on, but again, this is just for my own satisfaction. Did you buy in any areas that were rough, that you saw gentrification happening in, the bars going in, the coffee shops, the artist studios, things like that? Or did you pretty much buy in more established areas?
My first property was in an area that I had hoped to see gentrification, or at least a little bit turnover in the market. It was a really rough area of town. And my strategy was that, maybe I could have the best property on the block and give really quality, affordable housing to the existent tenant base that would want to keep it clean and maintain it. And I actually didn't think about this story before you brought it up, but one of my tenants actually was cooking meth on their gas stove.
Okay, so a homebody cooking.
Yes. So these are kind of the things that when you see like a really attractive cap rate, you don't necessarily know what you know until you get in and experience it firsthand. And what ultimately happened was I didn't see the quality of tenant that I was hoping for. And there were a lot of problems that became really tough to manage over time. Yeah. And ultimately sold out of that property at a marginal profit, but I would never do that again.
So that's interesting that you say that, because I did a post about why you should never buy a D asset, a D property. And this is one of these ask me how I know things. At my boot camps, I say, ask me how I know, because I've made every freaking mistake you can possibly make. And Eric, Eric Upchurch, he brought me a t-shirt that said hashtag ask me how I know. So we started printing them and giving them away. But I did a post about that. And some kid posted, yeah, well, I've got 80 D class properties in whatever market it was. And I've been living great and cash flow. And I'm like, dude, just wait. But anyway, so talk about, actually that ties into the question I was just going to ask, which was talk about some good decisions you've made and maybe some bad decisions that you've made when you first started out. I mean, you came out whole on that deal, but it was probably a lot of brain damage. And when you look back on it, it's like, well, God, what was I thinking, kind of a thing. But is there anything else that comes to mind? Okay.
Yeah, let's just focus on the bad for a second, because we're on this bad train currently. The other bad was early COVID, and even pre-COVID, when rates were really low and everyone and their dog was getting into real estate, and contractors were at a premium. I couldn't find any contractor to renovate or rehab any of my properties, and I put out many solicitations in every place I could think of, and only one person responded to me. And I was so thankful that this contractor got back to me. And I know you're going to get mad at me.
I know where this is going. I'm puckering up right now as you're saying it.
Yes.
Oh God.
Do not judge me. This is a mistake I made so that I will not make it in the future and not put my investors at risk. But my contractor did a great job of selling himself over the phone. Never met I didn't meet this person physically or in the physical realm. And everything sounded great. And they asked on the first project for 50% down up front. And it was a $400,000 project. So I sent him $200,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I that's much more painful than I thought it was going to be. Did he completely disappear, or did they do anything?
So thankfully he didn't, but incompetence got in the way pretty quickly. So the idea for the down payment was for them to go buy materials. Oh, sure.
It's always for material, quote unquote.
Course,
and you would have been much better off to say, give me the material list. I'll send the, or you call me when you check out at Home Depot and I'll give you my credit card. That would have been a much safer way. But anyway, so exactly. talk about what happened ultimately.
So he bought some materials, definitely not all the materials he said he was buying, right, from that parts list. And then he started work. And then I had a property manager that was great at the time, and he would duck in quite frequently just see how the progress was going. And he started talking to the guy, and come to find out, not only had I given him all this money, this guy was not licensed to do work in the city of Pittsburgh. And he didn't pull permits on anything that he was doing.
Did you get a stop work order? Did you get a stop work order?
I sure did.
Oh, good God. Oh,
yep. So that thing was an absolute nightmare. Fortunately, I was able to salvage the project because my property manager, they started their own construction division within the property management company. So everything was kind of in one group, and trusted him implicitly. He executed on the plan, but I was still out a couple $100,000. So I had to file suit on this guy. We settled out of court because I didn't want to actually go to court and chase bad money with more good money. So I got some cents on the dollar back, but learned an invaluable lesson that I'll have with me for the rest of my life.
That's what we call a seminar, brother. That's absolutely a seminar. So, we get them, and that's okay. You learn.
Well, let's get to the good stuff, right? Closing out 186 units. And I want to get into the specifics on the deal, but jumping from, duplex, triplex, quadplex, doing a few of those now to 186, what were some of those mindset and mental hurdles that you had to overcome to go from that level to now such a big door count on your first deal?
Let's call it fear. Let's call it what it is. What fear did you have to overcome to get to go after that large deal?
I was terrified. So I had gone down this path of small multifamily, learned really quickly that it's really hard to scale. It's hard to trust people now after I've been burned, right? So it's like, okay, how do I actually go execute on a larger building? Because one of the best pieces of advice I got early on, and I didn't listen to it, was, hey, go bigger sooner. Because for all intents and purposes, doing a 2-unit transaction, like all the steps that go into it, it's the same more or less as doing a 186 unit building.
It really is. It really is. People don't, people don't realize that. And it's funny you say that, because a lot of times when I'm interviewing on my show with guys that, or women that have, 5, 6, 7, 8,000 doors, I ask that question, what would you do if you told 18-year-old self? And it's always, because I know what the answer is going to be. It's always go bigger, faster. And so, but everybody, you got to start somewhere. We all have that courage muscle, and most people start with a house, a duplex, whatever, and then ultimately go larger. That's just the way life is.
And I mean, it worked out for me. Like, I learned a lot of lessons, more specifically what not to do, right, on the first couple of deals. And I do want to say my Pittsburgh venture has been a success more broadly, but I do want to bring up the cautionary tales for everybody else listening to not follow in my footsteps as well. But then to to remove the fear from the process, I said, I need to sign up for a coaching program. Like, there's no other way to do it but to get like mentorship and have my hand held throughout this process. And I ultimately gravitated to you guys. I think I probably talked to 7 or 8 coaching programs, and it was a no-brainer to join the Warrior program. You guys by far have the most like holistic approach to real estate education, more kind of not just the hardcore real estate material, but more of kind of like the mind, body, and psychology around becoming successful and growing yourself in this capacity. And it didn't come off as salesy, right? You guys weren't pushing. I wasn't getting 25 reminder emails on sign now, here's a discount, blah, blah, blah. You really wanted to get to know me and make sure that I'm a good fit for you guys as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about value alignment.
Part of my job is to protect the program as much as it is to build it at this point. So let me just say this. If you're considering possibly getting some guidance, so you can experience the life that you're wanting this year rather than, later, or maybe you thought you could be more effective, with this, text the word crush to 72345 to see if the Warrior program might be able to help you overcome your challenges and maybe fear, get past that fear, or avoid those mistakes. And the Warrior program might be able to help you overcome those challenges so you can accomplish what you want, which is for most people lifetime cash flow. Again, text crush to 72345. We'd love to talk to you. That's how you apply. So let me ask you this. On that note, what suggestions would you have for someone starting out in real estate investing?
The first thing is defining like what your strategy is. Like, real estate is really kind of like, I think for people who don't know anything about real estate investing, it's this very like daunting monolith, if you will, where like all of real estate investing is this one thing. But those that are in real estate investing know that there's 1,000,001 strategies to go and try to execute, right? The one I've picked, and we can get into this a little bit later, is sub-institutional multifamily in Cleveland, Ohio, specifically. And we'll get into that strategy and kind of the why behind it in a little bit. But I think it's really focusing on what you want to do. And that will change over time as you understand more. But then it's really signing up for a coaching program and getting a mentor. And not only getting a mentor, but like really buying in and getting a network, right? And connections and learning from other people that have been there and done that. Because Rod, one of the first things you said at the Warrior event that I attended in Denver last year was that real estate is a team sport. And I never fully grasped that, because like I went off and did it on my own in Pittsburgh and I learned a lot and it was great, but it was all me, right? And what I found in this multifamily space is you need a team that not only has a track record that has executed against an operating plan before, which is what you get with a mentor if you ultimately end up partnering with them, but also people that have complementary skill sets that do things, quite frankly, that you either like don't have experience doing, or quite frankly, that you don't want to do.
You don't enjoy. You don't enjoy, right?
Yep.
Right. Yeah. And you guys have heard me talk about it on the show. This business is a team sport. Play to your freaking strengths, because when you play to your strengths, and there are lots of different hats you can wear in this business. There's the analytics, there's the underwriting for those of you that are analytical. There's the outgoing piece for those of you, because you got to build relationships with investors and sellers and brokers and vendors and so on and so forth. And then there's the asset management or project management piece, which obviously you'd be extraordinary at, Harrison, which is, what happens, the biggest part of the job, what happens after you close on it to make sure that you execute on it properly. And but if if you're playing to your strengths, you're happy. You're doing what you enjoy. You're going to be better at it, okay? And the big thing is you're going to be passionate. And to influence people requires passion. And if you're loving what you're doing, you're going to be passionate about it. So that's a super important piece. Now, you brought up Cleveland. And I know your coach has got a huge infrastructure in Cleveland. He's a very good friend of mine, and Jason, so I'm sure that influenced that decision for you. But talk about why you like that particular demographic, that area, and the demographic. I'm sorry, not demographic, that particular type of asset that you described. Talk about that a little bit.
One of the things I was really hyper focused on in bringing syndications to my investor network in the Bay Area was I needed to bring someone with a track record, right? I didn't want to say, hey, here's Harrison with his first 186 unit deal. Please give me your money. Trust me on this first one. It's going to work out great, right? That's the wrong way to sell that type of deal. So Jason has built an amazing business, and he not only has been, syndicating for 20 years in Western Pennsylvania, Northeast Ohio. He also has property management vertically integrated into his business, which is a tremendous value add from a syndication point of view, because we're not outsourcing property management to a third party, right? We have complete control over costs and resource allocation. And then his wife is also, for all intents and purposes, the designer and general contractor managing all the subs on the deal too. So you kind of have everything in house,
and she's a ball of fire too. Yeah, no, they're beautiful human beings. Yeah, they're wonderful. And the one thing you just said is one of the biggest value adds that we have in our Warrior program that you could get elsewhere, but this is one of the big things. Out of these 160, 170,000 units that our Warriors own that we know of, they're almost all done between Warriors, okay, and coaches and students. And I know you've got students in that student in that deal, another Warrior in that deal. You told me before we started recording, and that's the power of team. That's the power of being in a group that's doing this. So if you're not interested in the Warrior program, that's fine, but go create this for yourself. Go find people that are doing this so that, you have that benefit, because that's probably one of the biggest benefits of this business is getting into a group you bounce ideas off of, you find people that are strong where you're weak, you partner up with them, and it just fantastic. So yeah, I appreciate you bringing that piece up.
It's true. And then the coaching student fills a void that I don't want any part of. He's ex-KPMG, Deloitte, focused on tax and audit. So he's playing kind of the CFO, CPA function of the team. And then me on the capital raising, investor relations, process, business technology side. It's becoming a pretty beautiful operating partnership that we hope to build over time.
Well, I wanted to hear some more details on that, because that's a question I get literally all the time, at least a couple times a week. It's like, hey, I'm a new student. I don't have any multifamily experience. Why would a coach, why would this successful person want to work with me and be on their team? What's been your experience of you adding value, how you do that, and why do you find that you were able to get on a team like that?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I don't think you really grasp it till you're doing it. I remember again at a Warrior event, a woman raised her hand and said, hey, I work at a Fortune 500 company. I stare at Excel all day, and my only focus is like risk mitigation, downside risk protection for investments that our company is making. And it's like, she had no idea how she would fit. And it's like, well, you would be a perfect underwriter once you understand like real estate metrics.
My God, exactly.
Perfect transition for you. And I think people don't get like all the applicable skills that you learn in your W-2 corporate job that are directly applicable to real estate. And to kind of put like a bow on it, just from my perspective, my background was in go-to-market business operations and business technology and all the tooling required to stitch things together, to automate process and scale businesses with technology versus like human capital. And that's what I did for my coach immediately. They were thinking about upgrading to a new property management system. So I helped with that property management system upgrade that gives them much more insight into real-time analytics of how properties are performing, so on and so forth. And then now I've built, and this is what I'm really interested in, kind of a technology stack internally for myself with a CRM, email marketing system, investor portal, to really automate and give more of an institutional quality investor experience to my investors. So that's where I brought my skills directly to this business.
Wow.
You just figured out where you could add value and you did it. And you did it even before you had a deal, I imagine, with Jason, which is wonderful.
So we know where you're at and where you started. Let's say you did not overcome that fear and mindset challenge and you had just kept going where you were going. What do you think your journey and path would have looked like on the path that you were on before?
Great question. One of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite shows is from The Office. And I don't know if you guys remember this episode, but Michael Scott calls everyone into a board meeting or the conference room. And he has a quote written on the wall. And it said, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take," by Wayne Gretzky. And then Michael Scott co-opts it that he quoted Wayne Gretzky underneath. And everyone laughs because the quote really doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. Like, how can you miss a shot that you don't take if you never took the shot? But what I think it means is that, like, the opportunity cost of doing nothing is something, right? And like, you always think what could be, right, if you didn't do anything. And I think that's what separates the people that are successful, not only in business, but in real estate investing more specifically, like propensity to take action, right? Actually going and doing something to be the change that you want to see. And I think if I didn't do that, I would still be working my corporate job, probably at a different startup. I have 2 kids now, 4 and 2. And I know, Rod, one of your biggest regrets back in life was when you were working 1 million hours a week, you didn't get to spend time with your family. And that was something that I didn't want to do. And like, I wanted to be there for my kids, be there for all their extracurriculars, and, just be the dad that I know that they need and be the partner to my wife that I know she needs. So all that stuff led me to real estate as really the only logical outcome, because I get to control my own destiny. And I get to build the life around a career that I want.
Well, I was going to ask you what your why was, and I didn't have to even ask at this point, because obviously I know it's your kids. And by the way, it wasn't so much for me that I didn't spend time with my kids. I was there but I wasn't there mentally. I wasn't present. I was so focused on success that I was distracted. It's my greatest regret to this day. My kids will say I was a great dad, but I didn't live up to my own expectations, which is why I spend a lot of time teaching, how to not do that. Time blocking, weekly planning, things of that nature. So any other words of wisdom that you'd be willing to share with aspiring real estate investors? Any other suggestions? You said get a mentor. I mean, I appreciate that. That's self-serving, but I mean, I agree with it. I have had coaches my whole life. I talk about Michael Jordan had 5 coaches at the height of his career, but other, anything else come to mind?
I'd say read or listen to as much content as you can get your hands on, and really specifically dive into the cautionary tales, like I've already alluded to, and the mistakes that other people have made, so that you don't make them. Case in point, the Wall Street Journal a couple of weeks ago came out with that article on the guy who defaulted on $500 million worth of real estate in Houston, I believe, because he said some pretty crazy things, namely that he can make money in any market cycle. Right. If you ever hear someone say that, you run away as fast as you possibly can. Run. Run.
Yeah, he's a nefarious character, actually. I understand he left with a bunch of investor money, went to India. And what's bad about that it's in the Wall Street Journal is it taints the entire industry. And most people have integrity and they do it right and they care about their investors. This guy was a complete charlatan, and of course the media is going to grab on to anything negative they can. We recognize this, guys. The media is not some public service organization. They are for profit, and they know that they get much more profit if they throw negativity out there. So let me ask you just a couple more final questions, Harrison. You've added incredible value today.
Thank you.
What do you think some of the best advice you've ever received?
It's funny because at the time I got this advice, I didn't think it was great advice, but it was early on in my career at Okta. And things are crazy at a startup. You're wearing multiple hats, a lot of hats that you're not qualified to do the job of, but it's a great learning opportunity. And I asked my boss at the time, I said, "Hey, how do you do this certain thing?" I can't even remember what it was, but his answer at the time kind of took me aback. It was a little persnippety, but he said, "I don't know, Harrison, figure it out." And I've thought about that comment so many times, that there's this element of just like if you can figure things out and really try to figure out how things work and the why, and then go execute on it, you're going to be better off than 99.9% of people in this world, right?
That is
and then,
fantastic advice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really wanted to call the guy a dick at the time, right? I was kind of upset when he said it because like I needed help in this certain thing. But like, it's kind of like teaching your kid how to ride a bike. You don't necessarily ride the bike for them. You allow them to learn and do it themselves, and then they grow as a result. So I think that's the best piece of advice I've literally gotten in my career.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely incredible advice. And yeah, and it actually you just gave me something, because, you know, my son calls me a lot, and I probably need to do more of what you just described rather than, you know, helping him with it, because I mean, super sharp, beautiful human being, but no, that's good. Well, listen, my friend, it's great to see you. You talked about the Warrior events. You know, you talked about that Fortune 500. By the way, just to let you know, our next Warrior event's out in your neck of the woods, going to be in Phoenix in November. Cool. So I'm sure I'll see you there. If you guys don't know, we do events just for our students. Typically have, you know, 300 plus students there. It's an incredible networking opportunity, and of course, we deep dive on all sorts of things that we just don't have time to do elsewhere. So, but listen, I appreciate you, brother, and appreciate you coming on, and say hi to Jason and the wife for me, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, we'll do. Thank you guys so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
You bet. Mark, I'll see you later, buddy.
See you
Thanks.
guys.
So one other quick thing. We encounter so many people that are frankly frustrated. You know, they're looking in the mirror and they're frustrated that they haven't been able to escape the rat race. They haven't been able to build cash flow to the point where they're able to have financial and time freedom with their families. You know, and maybe they see other people buying real estate and creating, you know, incredible cash flow, and they think, well, it's just scary. You know, buying apartments is intimidating. And I get it. See, that's why we created our Warrior Mentorship Program. They're our coaching students, and they've had extraordinary results. My students, I've been teaching about 5 years, and they own upwards of 140,000 units now that we know of, right? And we feel like it's just getting going. Now we're looking to grow this group and really take it to the next level. And honestly believe that the greatest transfer of wealth could be upon us right now with this current economic environment. Everything's going on sale. So we're looking for people who want to follow a proven framework, really like a blueprint or a map, literally step by step. And then they're able to leverage our systems and our incredible network to raise money and equity, to find deals and close those deals and build partnerships, really nationwide. So if you're interested in finding out more about how you can become more in our incredible network and take advantage of the unbelievable opportunities that are upon us, you can apply to my Warrior Mentorship Program by texting the word CRUSH to 72345, or you can go to mentorwithrod.com. And what we'll do is we'll set up a call so you can check us out and we can check you out and see if it's a fit. Now, again, you can go to mentorwithrod.com or text the word CRUSH to 72345 to apply, and we will speak soon.